Hey growers, welcome back. I'll start as I always do, saying that I hope all of you are healthy and staying safe. If you remember from the last videos that we did, we walked you through seed starting, actually putting the seeds into your growing medium, covering them up, putting them into the grow chamber, monitor and adjusting the environmental conditions within the chamber. Then when the seedlings germinated, we took you to the next step of actually taking the small seedlings out of the 601 trays and putting them into either your multi-cell packs or into your individual containers, and then putting them back into the grow chambers to grow on and get bigger, to the point where we then take them and plant them into your garden at the appropriate time, which for most of your vegetables are going to be that last week of May. A few of them you may be able to put in earlier: lettuce, kales, maybe some of the broccolis and cooler weather crops. So now we're going to look at a subject that, as I told you before, is probably the second most misunderstood and complex subject for most growers to understand. Even a lot of commercial growers have issues with understanding how to maximize their nutrient delivery to their plants so that they get the best growth, the best flower, the best fruit production. So what we're going to do is look at this very complex subject, try to bring it down to a level where you have an idea of some of the science behind the issue, but not make it so difficult for you that you're confused at the end of these videos. We want to give you a taste of the science, an appreciation for why it's so important, and then give you some very simple rules that will allow you to maximize growth either indoors or outdoors. If we look at plant nutrition, we can take the analogy of human nutrition. I'm a competitive athlete. I've been a competitive athlete all my life. I'm a trainer. I train hard 5 days a week. I train serious athletes. In addition to the physical part of training, a very important component is also nutrition. We know that there's a difference between eating to a level where your body will survive and eating to a level where you're optimizing your body's ability to perform. So when we look at human nutrition, we know that, say we take a bottle of vitamins. I need to take some vitamins. Everybody says take vitamins. Well, how do you figure out what the heck your body needs and how much of a particular nutrient to take? Science over the decades has helped us out with this. We have what we call the minimum daily requirement, which is the nutrient requirement that allows your body to sit there and function for cell functions, cell division, growth, but not at an optimal level. The next notch up from minimum daily requirement is a recommended daily requirement, the RDA. That is a number that has been derived through years of research. When you take into consideration the average person's daily output of energy for walking, grocery shopping, going to the office, mowing a lawn, walking the dog, doing chores, your nutrient levels, because of the increased activity, increase. But then above that, we have the next level of optimal nutrition. If you look at world-class athletes, their nutrition program is very closely controlled and monitored by a science team, because we know that when you're running near optimal levels, just like with a car running at redline, everything has to be in that optimal range. Why is this important either for us or for plants? Because we know that we have this optimal range, whether plants or humans, the optimal range of nutrient levels, which will give you the highest productivity, the highest quality. If we have certain nutrient levels that are below optimal, or we have certain nutrient levels that are above optimal, both those conditions can prevent the overall organism functioning optimally. We can take things like folic acid, vitamin C, iron. We know deficiencies in these can cause some very serious and visible diseases in humans. We can see the same thing in plants. So our function as plant growers is to, number one, understand what these optimal levels for our plants are, and then deliver those optimal levels in the proper format. And again, this will get a little bit complicated for a very short period of time, but it's very worth your while to understand this. So when we start looking at plants, take something as simple as a tomato. We all grow tomatoes. In fact, many of you know me as Dr. Tomato. We can say, all right, my tomato needs food, obviously, so I will give it some food. But we don't really give thought, most of us, to what that actually translates to. We'll pick a fertilizer up and it says tomato food on it. We don't really turn it around. We just assume that it has everything our tomatoes need. But if we look at some of the research data out of places like UMass, Cornell, Purdue, University of Colorado, decades of research have shown us that tomatoes, again, like humans, need different nutrients and different levels of nutrients at different stages of their life. Tomatoes, for commercial growers, we know, we generally, if we're growing them in a greenhouse, have either 3 or 4 stages. That early stage right out of seedling, the vegetative stage when they're getting bigger and putting a lot of foliage on, the flower production stage, and the fruit production stage. When we look at what nutrients our tomato plants need, they don't just need the big 3 that we'll talk about shortly, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We also need to target very specifically levels of calcium, magnesium, silicon, chlorine, iron, manganese, zinc, copper, boron, molybdenum, and even a couple more. We can grow tomatoes without keying in and being at the exact levels, but again, we will be at a suboptimal level. And my philosophy, either with physical training or with growing, is if you're going to put the time and effort in, make it the most productive time and effort that you can possibly put in. So when we start looking at what you as growers need to reach this optimal level, we'll take 2 or 3 different scenarios. Let's first take the scenario that you're going to be putting a garden in outside in ground. It may be a brand new garden that you have covered with grass and you're looking at, and it's like, oh boy, here we go, we got to get all the grass out, turn it over, and then I guess I have to put some manure in, or it may be an established garden. So now, how do we look at this garden and say, this is what we do have to put in? We have to look at this in from 2 different directions. Number one, what type of plants are you going to be growing in that garden? Because again, different plants will require different nutrient levels. So when you plan your garden, get an idea first of what it is you're going to be growing. Make a list: squash, zucchini, beans, tomato. And a lot of plants, we can, as long as we keep within a nutrient window that's fairly well controlled, the plants will do very well, very close to that optimal. But because we're not just going to be growing that one specific plant, we need to average out a little bit so that we don't drive ourselves nuts trying to do this square feet at this level. So we want to give a good, basic, recognized nutrient load in that garden for those plants that we're going to be growing. So get an idea of the plants that you're going to be growing. Number two, you'll have an idea of what those different plants require in terms of nutrients, and that can be gained through some of the websites, the extension services. And the bottom line is going to come down to, most of them will say, a well-balanced nutrient load, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So people will very often bring a bag of soil into me and say, geez, Dr. Tomato, how's my soil look? What do you think I need to put in it? I can look at that soil and give them an evaluation of things like its friability, it's the porosity level of it, the maybe the organic content in it versus the inorganic content, probably the drainage. But I cannot, by looking at them, at that soil, give them an evaluation of the nutrient content of that garden and how well the nutrient content of that soil matches what the nutrient content of the vegetables they're going to be growing is. So if you're putting in a garden for the first time, or you're working with a garden that you haven't really done much with, you've planted but not really put much into the soil, my absolute number one recommendation is get a soil test. Soil tests can be done at a lab like UNH, University of Pennsylvania, Cornell, or you can go into a place like Blue Seal, and they can take the vials, send it off, and either have it sent to you or back to the store. So have a soil test done. Again, this is the only way we have of knowing what that nutrient content is in that plot that you want to grow in. What I'm going to do is break these videos down into about 12-13 minute segments. We're at about 13 minutes now, so I will see you in the next segment.